Alright, this will be the 10th and final video in this series on the refret, the neck refret. This neck was mailed to me for a refret. So what I do when you mail me a neck is I put it here in my body jig. This is a strap body I just threw together here for this special purpose of setting up necks that I refret that are mailed to me. I use it for Strats and I use it for Tellys also. And there's some other guitars I can use it for as long as they're a 25.5-inch scale with the same 4-bolt pattern that Fender has. So if you look, you'll see that I've got the neck pocket rather widened. That's because I get some necks in here that are wider. And I want them to all be able to fit. And if I have to tilt this a little bit, some angle in relation to my bridge, to make it in relation to your bridge on your guitar, so that the strings line up properly on the neck, then that extra room gives me some variability of movement. So this is a good jig for doing this, and it's set up at the right depth, the roughly about a 16.5 millimeter depth of the neck pocket, and a standard tremolo Fender bridge that I've got hardtailed down, decked as they say, non-operative. So now we can make the nut. Sorry, I'm not a professional photographer by any means. And the way we do that, I've got all my nut files laid out that I'm going to use. I've got different types. I've got the straight on, then I've got the beveled nut files, then I've got some of these guys here that are really good for special purposes, straight ons that are diamond. So first thing I got to do, I showed you in the last video how I marked the nut. The first thing we got to do is check the string alignment with those marks I made. So you just stretch a string over that mark and take a look at it right on the mark and see how it's looking. Now back here you got to watch the saddle, the string on the saddle, which was a little bit hung up just then. But you can check your neck alignment, your string alignment like this, basically. And then I take the 6th string, pull it over and do the same thing and make sure it's squaring up. Another thing I like to do is look at the distance from the little mark I made to the edge of the fingerboard, and in most cases they need to be 4 millimeter. And that's about what I have here. About what I have. Yes. Yeah, it's about a 3.75 millimeter to the edge of the fingerboard on both ends, so this should work just fine. So what I'm going to do is take a 10 straight on flat nut file. This is, believe it or not, it's actually got a little saw edge to it, and right in the center of that mark and straight on, you want to begin to make a little indentation. And you want to do this first for the 1st and 6th string. This is a way of checking and double checking for your string alignment. You want to make sure you got your string alignment right, because if you don't, you'll have to erase those markings and start over on the nut. And the other thing is, after you make this little indent, well, what's going to happen to that? Well, I'll just cover that up with a little bone dust and super glue mix, and I can start all over again. That's not that much of a problem. It's not going to be that far off to just mend it, and it'll look fine. But, in other words, without having to make a whole new nut. But after I make those 2 little points there, then I've got a place where the string actually is going to sit. And looking at the edge here, I can pretty much tell that it's in alignment with the other side pretty well. So now I just drop it in that little hole I made, a little groove there in the nut, and that tells me that I've got an alignment that's equal for both E strings. So now I want to start on the grooving. And again, we go back to the number 10. You take the smallest one because it's the thinnest, and it's easier to see that mark. Much easier to see around the other side of this thing than one of those big beveled nut files. So I make a little mark, and then I'm going to make a little starting point on this one, and just make them as straight on as you can. You can get them straighter once you get the beveled nut files going on these, but you can start, just get it as straight as you can. And right there on that point with a number 10. Right there. Whoops. There we go. There we go. Right there. Okay. And then here's number 5. And look both sides and make sure you're going right down the center of that little pencil dot you made yourself. Grooving a nut is difficult. Every spacing has to be where it's supposed to be, because if it's not, then it throws the others off, of course. So here I take a 12-inch beveled nut file. Now that I've got me a little place started, going that way, it makes it a little wider, a little bit wider. And then on the other side of it is a 20-inch. So I flip it over. For my larger strings, I get the 20-inch going on the 3 bottom strings. All right. And now I'm going to be starting on the, I'm going to go ahead and work on the G first. And I approximate the depth by eye. So I want to cut in with a 20 on this one, which gives it a little bit of a bevel, but not too much. And then I'll take a 17 straight on diamond, and we'll go, and as we file somewhat down at a slope toward the tuners, okay? All right, I'm not going to file very much into these because I guarantee you that this is going to have to be a pretty high slot for these frets. So I'm not going to take them down too far yet. So here's a number 10 diamond. Going that way with it. And then I want to take a 13 straight on for the B slot. And again, I'm going down as kind of a slope here as I'm cutting into that. Now for the D string, I think a 32 will give us plenty of clearance for that and for the future. So a beveled nut file at a downhill slope toward the gears. And then I use I like using like a 42 for the A. They vary in size. It just takes care of all of them. And then over here, a 50. And what I want to do is bevel this. I want to start a bevel on it so it'll have a beveled top to the slot. But I don't want to bevel the whole thing in there. Just a little bit down with the bevel, and then take the 50, same gauge, and diamond, and finish it off that way. Straight in, straight on. Now we're ready to put strings in. Tighten the truss rod and finish the setup. And I'm going to let this next set overnight. After I adjust the truss rod and do the setup, I'm going to let it sit overnight because the truss rod may need that time to settle. So I'll tweak it the next day and be able to pack it up and send it back out to the customer. So we'll set this up for the string gauge the customer is going to be using, which in this case was 10 to 47s, and standard tuning. So everything will be set with the truss rod for those gauges of strings, including the nut. So you have a nice day. Thank you all for watching this 10-part series with me. And I hope that this has helped someone to either understand the process, what goes into this. A lot of people are just curious about it. And then there's some guys doing this on their own. Maybe it'll give some tips to someone along the way. I'm not saying this is the way to do this. I'm saying this is the way I do it. If you've got better methods, I'm sure there's better methods out there, but these are the methods that have been proven to me for at least the last 12 years. All right, have a good day. Thanks for watching.